The dark side of social media algorithms. A thumb pauses, not for long, barely a second. A face appears on the screen, then another, a joke, a headline, a tragedy, a dance, a conspiracy, a puppy, a political argument, a stranger crying in their car. You never chose any of it. Yet somehow, it felt exactly like what you wanted. Most people believe they control what they see online. That isn't entirely true. Every swipe feels like a decision, but behind every decision, another system is quietly making one of its own, invisible, constant, patient, a system that isn't asking what you like. It's asking something far more valuable. What will keep you here? Just a little longer? That question has become one of the most powerful forces shaping modern life. Social media wasn't always built this way. In its early years, platforms behaved more like digital bulletin boards. Posts appeared in the order they were shared. Friends spoke. You listened. The experience was simple, almost chronological. Then something changed. The internet became too large for human attention. Billions of photos, videos, opinions, and headlines began competing for a resource that never increased: your time. And so the algorithm was born, not as a villain, but as a solution. At first it seemed harmless. It learned which videos you finished, which images made you pause, which headlines you ignored. Every tap, every hesitation, every late-night scroll became another piece of a puzzle you didn't know you were solving. Researchers noticed something strange. The algorithm often understood patterns in human behavior before the users themselves did, not because it could read minds, but because it could read habits. It didn't need to know who you were, it only needed to know what you couldn't resist. Most people think social media predicts their interests. The reality is more unsettling. Over time, it begins shaping them. Imagine standing inside a room where every mirror slowly changes your reflection. Not enough for you to notice. Just enough that months later, you no longer remember what you looked like before. Recommendation systems work in much the same way. The content you consume influences the content you're shown. The content you're shown influences what you believe. And what you believe changes what you choose next. The loop feeds itself. Silently. Psychologists have long understood that human attention is drawn toward novelty, conflict, uncertainty, and emotional intensity. Algorithms discovered the same truth, but at a scale no human could ever match. Every second, millions of tiny experiments unfold. One headline instead of another, one color instead of another, one recommendation instead of another. Most fail, a few succeed spectacularly. Those winners spread across the platform, not because they're the most accurate, but because they're the most engaging. And engagement has become the currency of the digital world. This creates an uncomfortable paradox. The posts that make us calm rarely spread. The ones that make us angry often do. Fear travels faster than balance. Outrage outperforms nuance. Certainty defeats complexity. Not because humanity suddenly changed, but because attention has always followed emotion. The algorithm simply learned to optimize for it. Scientists still debate how deeply recommendation systems influence our beliefs. Human behavior is extraordinarily complex, but study after study suggests that repeated exposure changes perception in subtle ways. What feels familiar begins to feel true. What appears often begins to feel important. Reality itself starts competing with repetition. And perhaps the strangest part is this. The algorithm has no opinions. It doesn't care about politics or truth or happiness. It doesn't wake up with an agenda. It simply follows a mathematical objective. Keep you watching. Everything else becomes a consequence. Most people imagine artificial intelligence as something that will arrive in the future. But perhaps the first AI that truly changed human civilization wasn't a robot. It was a recommendation engine. quietly deciding what billions of people would see each morning before they ever formed their first thought. The greatest influence is rarely the loudest. It is the one you stop noticing. Maybe the darkest side of social media isn't that someone is controlling what you think. It's that no one has to. A machine doesn't need to change your mind overnight. It only needs to nudge your attention, one recommendation at a time. Because in the end, civilizations are not only shaped by the ideas they create, they are shaped by the ideas they repeatedly see. And somewhere behind every endless scroll, an invisible equation is still asking the same silent question. Not who you are, but who you are most likely to become if you never stop scrolling.